I do not leave Missoula with a plan. I leave with a backpack that is too light, a jacket that still smells faintly of my apartment closet, and a brain that keeps trying to pretend this is a weird holiday weekend where everyone got sick at once. The pretending stops in the stairwell because my building has turned into a funnel. Every door opens into the same narrow choke point. Every person who panics ends up pressed against everyone else. Someone has propped the front entrance open with a potted plant, and that alone tells me nobody is thinking straight anymore. Open doors mean movement. Open doors mean noise. Open doors mean strangers. I keep my face neutral, eyes down, and I move through the lobby without stopping. There is a woman on the couch with her shoes off and one sock half peeled, staring at a blank television. There is a guy at the mailboxes ripping open envelopes with shaking hands, not reading, just tearing, just searching. A kid runs past me holding a phone in both hands, screen bright, thumb smashing refresh, refresh, refresh. Nobody looks at me long enough to recognize me from the third-floor laundry room or the parking lot. That is fine. I do not want a conversation. I do not want company. I want distance. Outside, the street feels wrong in a way that is hard to explain without turning it into drama. It is not chaos everywhere. It is normal in patches. One block over, a couple walks a dog and pretends the dog is the important thing. At the intersection, a pickup sits at a green light because the driver is leaning forward, forehead against the steering wheel, hands hanging limp. Nobody honks. The silence around that truck spreads out, and the cars behind it just start reversing, one at a time, slow and careful, as if backing away will keep the problem from becoming real. I pass the campus without looking in that direction. That is where my whole life is supposed to be. Graduate school, deadlines, meetings, the familiar guilt of never reading enough. Now it is just buildings and sidewalks and a lot of glass. I already saw a video from a friend of an emergency vehicle stuck sideways in a bike lane because nobody made room for it. I already heard the sirens stop and then start again, farther away, then stop again. Sirens used to mean help. Now they are just a sound that pulls people toward trouble. Day 3. That is what I keep telling myself. Day 3 of something that started with a bulletin and a calm voice and an official phrase about isolated incidents. Day 3 of watching the internet fill with clips that get deleted and then re-uploaded with different captions. Day 3 of my building group chat turning into a rumor mill and then into silence when the first person stopped answering. If it is day 3, that means it can still be contained. If it is day 3, that means the roads still work. If it is day 3, that means I am not too late. My car is parked behind the building, squeezed between a Subaru with a smashed taillight and a sedan with a sticky note on the windshield that says sorry in big block letters. I unlock my door and get in without sitting there. I do not scroll. I do not text. I start it, check mirrors, and pull out. The radio comes on, and I shut it off. I do not want voices right now. I want to hear the engine, the tires, the normal parts of a normal decision. The first half hour out of town is tense but workable. Traffic is heavier than it should be for midweek, but it moves. The worst of it sits around gas stations. People are stacking plastic jugs in trunks, spilling fuel, arguing with cashiers through glass. A man in a hunting vest stands in front of the convenience store door with his arms out, not letting anyone in. He is not law enforcement. He is just a guy who decided he runs a line now. Nobody challenges him. Everyone stays a few yards back and stares at the ground or at their phone screens. I keep going. I am heading northeast out of habit more than strategy at first, toward places with fewer people and more trees. My family is not here. There is no farmhouse waiting for me. My parents are in Oregon, and calling them last night did not feel reassuring. My mom kept trying to talk around the subject, asking if I had enough food, asking if I had cash, asking if I had been outside. My dad kept going quiet in the background, and once I heard him say my name in a tone that made my stomach go cold. Not fear, not panic. The tone people use when they are doing math on a situation. I turn toward the highway that aims at the mountains, and the road begins to clog. Not stopped yet, but slower. A line of vehicles crawls toward the canyon mouth. Some people have roof boxes, some have trailers, some have nothing but backpacks in the back seat, and eyes that keep darting to the shoulders. Every time a car brakes, the entire chain reacts late, and I watch bumpers kiss. No one gets out to exchange insurance. They just keep moving, dragging plastic, pretending nothing happened. I keep my hands steady on the wheel and I watch for exits. I am not trying to win the road. I am trying to get away from it. I can feel the trap forming, even without letting myself name it. A stopped line becomes a parking lot. A parking lot becomes a camp. A camp becomes a fight. A fight becomes noise. Noise becomes a beacon for whatever is happening in the cities right now. I take a smaller route toward the Bob Marshall Wilderness because the name has been sitting in my head for years, a place on posters and in brochures and in other people's stories. I have done short trips, weekend hikes, the safe versions. I have never done the deep version. The idea of deep woods used to feel romantic in a way I never admitted out loud. Now it feels practical. Trees do not crowd you the way people do. Trees do not block exits with their bodies. Trees do not pull you into a stairwell. The road narrows and climbs, and the traffic thins for a while. That gives me a little room to think. I stop at a turnout and get out, keeping my door open, checking the air, listening. The wind moves through pine needles. A crow calls once and then goes quiet. I open my trunk and look at what I brought, and it hits me that I packed for discomfort, not collapse. A small tent, a sleeping bag rated for 30 degrees Fahrenheit, a water filter, 2 days of trail food, a headlamp, a cheap first aid kit, bear spray, a pocket knife, a paper map that I did not own yesterday. That map is the one smart thing I have done, and it was not even a noble decision. It was a theft. I stopped at a visitor center on instinct because it was still open, lights on, door unlocked. Nobody was working the desk. Brochures were scattered on the floor, and a rack of maps sat untouched. I took the thickest one, the kind with waterproof coating and trail numbers and little notes about ranger stations. I stuffed it down my jacket without thinking. I did not take souvenirs, I took directions. Back in the driver's seat, I fold the map across the steering wheel and trace routes with my finger. South Fork of the Flathead River, trailheads, backcountry stations. The paper shows little squares that mean cabins, but it does not promise what condition they are in. It does not promise they are stocked. It does not promise the doors still hang on their hinges. It does not promise I will even find them. I keep driving until the traffic stops moving for real. It happens in a shallow valley where the road bends and narrows, and there is no shoulder worth using. Cars sit bumper to bumper, engines idling, people outside their vehicles with arms flung wide, shouting at each other. I can't hear the words from where I am, but I can see the gestures that mean blame. Someone is trying to turn around and can't. Someone else is honking in steady bursts, not because it helps, but because noise feels powerful when a person has no power. I do not wait for it to resolve. I pull to the edge where the ground drops into brush, park crooked, grab my backpack, and lock my doors out of habit. Then I stop and stare at my car for a second. because leaving it feels permanent. It is a decent car. I worked for it. I maintained it. I know its quirks. It is also a metal box in a line of metal boxes that might turn into a cage. I shoulder the pack and step off the road. The first few hundred yards are messy. The brush grabs my pants. My boots slide on loose dirt. I move parallel to the stalled traffic, but far enough away that nobody can reach me in one quick rush. People are watching each other, not the hillside. They are too busy being furious. That fury spreads. I can feel it even without being close. It is the energy of a crowd deciding rules no longer apply. I find the trailhead after a short climb, marked by a weathered sign and a wooden post with numbers carved into it. A couple has stopped there too. The man is tying his kid's shoe, hands clumsy. The woman keeps scanning the road behind us, shoulders hunched, eyes wet but face set. Their car is parked half on the trail entrance, half in the weeds. When I pass, the woman opens her mouth, maybe to ask if I know something. I keep walking. I cannot afford to be the person who gives comfort right now. Comfort brings attachment. Attachment brings decisions that are not mine. Once I'm under the trees, the world shifts. Not peaceful, just different. The road noise fades behind me, replaced by footfalls, fabric rustle, the small sounds of a body moving through brush. I check my phone out of reflex. 2 bars. Then 1. Then it flips to no service. I stare at that little empty icon longer than I should. It is ridiculous to care about a symbol on a screen when the real world is falling apart. But it still feels like a door closing. I start walking faster, not because it helps, but because standing still out here with no signal makes me feel exposed. I keep the map tucked in my jacket, but I check it whenever the trail splits. My plan is simple. Follow the South Fork corridor until I am far enough in that the crowd cannot follow without effort. Find a ranger cabin marked on the map, one that sits near the river, away from main access points. The map shows one little square where a smaller trail branches off. It is not a guarantee. It is a possibility. Possibilities are all I have. By late afternoon, my shoulders burn from the straps, and my thighs start to protest with every uphill stretch. I do not let myself stop long. Short breaks only. Drink water, eat something, check the sky, keep moving. I am not running from a single threat I can see. I am trying to get ahead of a wave. Waves do not chase. Waves simply arrive. I pass 2 hikers coming the other direction. Faces pale and dirty, packs half-zipped, moving fast. The man lifts a hand in a quick greeting and then drops it. The woman does not look at me. She keeps her eyes on the trail ahead and her jaw tight. I step off the trail and let them pass with space. When they are a few yards beyond, I hear the man say one word in a low voice. Road. That is all. It tells me enough. Something happened behind us. Something that made these 2 turn around without setting up camp, without resting, without looking back. The sun starts to sink, and I have to choose between pushing into the dark or making camp. I find a spot off the trail near a stand of trees and set up my small tent with quick, practiced movements. I have done this before. Muscle memory still works when the mind wants to spiral. I filter water from a small stream that runs toward the river. The water comes out cold and clear, and I drink slowly, watching the tree line. I eat a packet of trail food without appetite, chewing because chewing keeps me grounded. I keep bear spray within reach. I keep my headlamp ready, but off. I do not want a beam shining through the trees. I do not want to announce myself. I do not even know what I am hiding from yet. And that is its own kind of problem. Night comes in layers. First, the shadows stretch. Then the blue fades. Then the woods become shapes and gaps. I sit with my back against a tree and listen. Far away, there is a sound that might be a vehicle horn. It is faint, and it repeats twice. Then nothing. Later, something else, softer, not mechanical. A human shout, cut off too fast. My hand tightens on the bear spray canister, and I stare into the black until my eyes ache. I crawl into my tent and zip it closed with careful, quiet pulls. The zipper sounds too loud. Everything sounds too loud when you know your body is the only thing keeping you alive. I sleep in short chunks, waking at every small noise, checking the seams, checking the air, checking for footsteps. In the early morning, frost glitters on the tent fabric. I exhale and see it in front of me, a brief cloud that disappears. I pack up fast and get moving. My hands shake a little while I stuff the tent into its sack. It is not fear in a clean, movie way. It is the simple fact that I cannot afford mistakes. A dropped item becomes a delay. A delay becomes a problem. The trail climbs and then drops toward the sound of water. When I reach the South Fork, it is wide and fast, cold enough that the air above it feels sharp. I stand for a moment on the bank and let myself stare. The river does not care about any of this. It keeps moving the same way it always has. That steadiness should feel comforting. Instead, it makes me feel small. I follow the river upstream, using it as a guide. I check the map again, unfolding it against my thigh so the paper does not flap. The cabin marker is still a long way in. There are also other squares, other structures, other places a person might go. I choose the one that looks least convenient, the one that requires a branch trail, a little climb, and a stretch away from the main corridor. Convenience is what everyone else will chase. I want the opposite. Around midday, I hear voices ahead. Not loud, but present. I step off the trail behind a tree and wait. Two men come into view, walking side by side, packs heavy, rifles slung, eyes scanning. One of them has a gait that suggests he is tired or hurt. The other keeps looking at the ground and then up at the trees, repeating the same pattern. Hunters, maybe. Or people who found guns and now feel safer holding them. I stay still until they pass, and I do not move for another minute after their footsteps fade. When I continue, my pace changes. Shorter steps, fewer stops, more listening. I keep imagining what it would feel like to have someone follow me. Not in a dramatic chase, just quiet tracking. The idea makes me check my back trail twice, scanning for broken branches, disturbed dirt, anything that says I am not alone. The branch trail is easy to miss. It is not a big sign and a welcoming path. It is a narrow cut in the brush with one old marker half hidden by new growth. I almost walk past it. I stop, backtrack, and match the marker number to the map. My fingers press the paper hard enough that my nails leave indentations. This is it. This is the fork that leads toward the little square on the map. The trail climbs through thicker timber. The air smells of sap and damp soil. The ground is soft enough to hold footprints. I do not like that. I keep my steps light, and I avoid the center of the path where prints show easiest. Half an hour in, I see something unnatural between the trees. Straight lines, a roof edge, wood that has been cut and stacked by human hands. The ranger cabin is real. It sits back from the river on a small rise, tucked behind a stand of firs. It is not a cute little postcard cabin. It looks used. The roof sags slightly at one corner. The porch has a missing board. The window shutters hang uneven. There is a woodpile that has half rotted into punky chunks. There is also a metal box near the door, the kind rangers use for tools or logbooks. I stand at the edge of the clearing and watch for a full minute, scanning windows, listening for movement, looking for smoke. Nothing, no voices, no footsteps, no fresh tracks that I can see from here. I move in a wide arc and check behind the cabin first. I'm not sure what I'm expecting. A person hiding, an animal, one of those infected bodies I have only seen on screens. I keep bear spray in my hand and my pocket knife in my other pocket, useless but reassuring. The back of the cabin is quiet. The ground has scattered pine needles and old leaves, not churned. The door is at the front, a heavy wood slab with a simple latch and a padlock that hangs open, as if someone left in a hurry and did not bother. That makes my skin feel tight. I do not walk straight to the door. I step onto the porch slowly, boards creaking under my weight, and I angle my body so I can move off fast if something lunges. I push the door inward with the edge of my boot. It swings a few inches and stops on something inside. My grip shifts on the bear spray. I lean in and see the obstacle, a chair. Someone wedged it under the handle from the inside. That means someone wanted the door harder to open. That means someone was here and cared enough to barricade. My mouth goes dry, and I step back off the porch without turning my back on the doorway. I circle to the nearest window, staying low. The glass is dusty but intact. I wipe a small patch with my sleeve and peer in. The cabin interior is dim but visible. A table, 2 chairs, a small cast-iron stove, a set of shelves with a few tins and jars, a bunk against one wall. Nothing moves, no shadow shifts, no face appears. I knock once, soft, then twice, slightly louder. No answer. I knock again and then speak, keeping my voice low. "Hello, I am not here to hurt you. I just need shelter." My words hang there and die in the trees. No movement, no reply. I move back to the door and push harder. The chair inside scrapes, then shifts. Then the door opens enough for me to slip my arm through. I spray a short burst of bear spray into the cabin, not toward anything specific, just to make the inside unpleasant. If someone is hiding. The smell hits instantly, even out here, sharp and chemical. My eyes sting. I wait 10 seconds, then pull the chair away with the tip of my boot. I step inside and freeze, listening. The cabin air is stale with old smoke and damp wood. No fresh food smell, no sweat smell, no obvious sign of recent living. There is a blanket folded on the bunk with dust on it. There is a tin cup on the table with a spider web stretched across the rim. The chair barricade looks older, not freshly shoved. I close the door behind me and set my pack down carefully. The first thing I do is check corners, under the bunk, behind the stove, in a small storage closet. I find mouse droppings, old wrappers, a cracked lantern, and a cardboard box of outdated medical supplies with labels that look sun-faded. No people, no bodies, no hidden surprise. I let myself exhale slowly through my nose, and then I stand still and absorb the fact that I am inside a structure again. Solid walls, a roof, a door I can lock. I move with purpose, because settling in is a way to keep my brain from running wild. I drag the chair back to the door and set it within reach. I check the windows for latches and test each one. 2 of them still lock. 1 sticks and takes a hard shove to close. The shutters outside can be pulled shut with a simple peg, and I do that for the most exposed window. I do not close everything. I want light. I also want to be able to see out without opening the door. On the table, I find the logbook. It is thick, with a plastic cover and water-stained pages. The first page has dates and names and notes about weather, trail maintenance, and supply drops. The writing changes over time. Some entries are neat and official. Some are rushed. Some are just a line. I flip through months, then years. It is not one person's journal. It is a record of rotation, rangers, volunteers, search and rescue staging. maybe occasional hunters or hikers who were permitted to use it. It tells me this cabin is known. That is both good and bad. Good because it means it exists for a reason. Bad because it means other people will think of it. I spend the rest of the day making the cabin functional. I sweep the floor with a stiff brush I find near the stove. Dust rises and I hold my shirt over my nose, blinking hard. I wipe the table. I check the stovepipe for obvious breaks. I open the small pantry shelves and take inventory. A few cans of beans, dented. A jar of rice that has turned into a hard clump from moisture. 2 packets of instant soup. A tin of coffee that smells flat when I open it. A box of matches with only a few left. I do not build a fire yet. Smoke is a signal, and I do not know who is out here. I filter water from the river using my bottle and filter, then stash 2 extra bottles in the corner. I find a metal pot and boil water anyway, using the tiny backpacking stove I brought. The hiss sounds loud inside the cabin, so I do it with the door cracked and my body positioned to see outside. The constant vigilance is exhausting, but it is also what keeps me from doing something dumb. Before dark, I walk a perimeter around the cabin. I look for tracks. I find old boot prints hardened into the dirt near the porch, probably from weeks ago. I find deer prints near the river. I find one bear scat pile on the far side of the clearing, old enough that it has dried. That is a reminder, not a threat. Bears do not care about outbreaks. Bears care about food and distance and surprise. I decide right then that I will not store food inside a flimsy bag. I will keep it sealed, hung, or locked in metal whenever possible. When night comes, I close the shutters and sit at the table with my headlamp on the lowest setting. I open the logbook again and read newer entries, scanning for anything recent. The latest date is from last fall. The last writer notes a late snow, a broken hinge on the east shutter, and a reminder that the radio repeater downriver has been unreliable. That detail sticks to my brain. Radio repeater. It means communication infrastructure existed out here, at least at some point. I add my own entry on the next blank page, and my handwriting looks different right away. Smaller, tighter. I write the date, then stop because the date feels fake now. Still, I write it. I write my name. Leah Carver. I write where I came from. Missoula. I write a sentence that is half for whoever might read it and half for me. Cabin occupied. Supplies low. No smoke unless necessary. I do not write about the outbreak directly. Anyone reading will already know. I sleep on the bunk with my boots beside it and my pack at my feet. I do not undress. I do not fully relax. The cabin creaks. The wind taps branches on the roof. Something small scratches inside the wall. I do not chase it. I let the mouse have the wall. I keep my mind on the door. Days begin to stack. I stop thinking in terms of my old schedule. I think in tasks, water, food, wood, quiet. I move early and late, and I keep midday for work close to the cabin. I fish with a cheap line and hook setup I find in a tin, and I catch 2 small trout after hours of trying. I clean them down by the river, and I bury the remains far from the cabin, under rocks, trying to avoid inviting scavengers. I cook them outside on my backpacking stove, staying low, watching the tree line while the fish sizzles. It is the best food I have eaten in my life, and the fact that it is just fish tells me how fast standards change. I learn the cabin's flaws fast. The roof corner leaks when it rains. The stove draws poorly, and I suspect the pipe has buildup somewhere. The shutters rattle in wind and need padding. There is no real lock, just a latch and that old chair trick. I reinforce the latch with a strip of metal scavenged from a broken toolbox. I wedge a wooden bar across the inside at night, braced against the wall. It is crude, but it adds resistance. Resistance buys time. Time buys choices. I also learn what silence costs. No radio, no phone, no updates. The world becomes what I can see. Trees, river, weather, tracks. Occasionally distant sounds that remind me humans still exist. Once I hear a gunshot far off, then another, then nothing. Another time I hear shouting downriver, not close enough to understand. Then a burst of movement in the brush that makes me crouch in the cabin doorway and grip bear spray until my hand cramps. I do not see the infected for the first week out here. That feels like relief until I remember what it really means. It means I do not know where the danger is. I do not know the patterns. In town, you at least had roads and crowds to show you where trouble might concentrate. Out here, the trees hide everything. The first time I see one, it is near the river. I am crouched behind a log, rinsing a pot. I see movement across the water, slow and uneven, a figure weaving between trees. At first, my brain tries to label it as a lost hiker. Then I notice how the person moves with no goal, just drift. No scanning for footing, no checking the current, no careful steps on rocks. The person stumbles, catches on a branch, keeps going without reacting. I sink lower behind the log until only my eyes are above it. I do not call out. I do not wave. I watch. The figure reaches the water's edge, steps in without hesitation, and wades until the current pushes hard enough to turn the body sideways. The person does not fight it in a normal way. Arms flail, then stop. The current drags the body downstream and out of view. The only sound is water. I stay frozen for a long time, staring at the spot where the person disappeared. That moment changes how I move. Water is not a barrier. Terrain is not a barrier. Not to something that does not care about discomfort or self-preservation. If the infected are still walking around, then the wilderness is not safe by default. It is just emptier. Emptier means fewer chances of contact, not zero. I start setting small, early warning systems around the cabin. Not complicated traps, nothing that would injure someone, just noisemakers. A line of fishing wire strung low between trees with tin cans tied to it. Dry sticks arranged to snap under weight near the porch. A few pebbles placed on the windowsill in a way that makes them fall if the shutter is moved. It is not foolproof. It is something. It lets me sleep in longer stretches. I keep reading the logbook at night. Not for entertainment, for patterns. The people who used this cabin had routines. Supply drops happened at certain times of year. Maintenance happened after storms. There are notes about a trail crew camp a mile south. There are notes about a ranger named Hollis who wrote in blunt, efficient sentences. I notice the name because it repeats. Hollis. Not every year, but enough to stand out. Notes about smoke conditions. Notes about a controlled burn. Notes about a rescue call. The handwriting is heavy and impatient. I do not know him, but the logbook gives him a shape. Around week 3, I start noticing human presence that feels current. A footprint near the river that is fresh enough to still have sharp edges. A snapped twig that smells green, not dry. A cigarette butt on a rock, still white, not weathered. I do not smoke. I stand over that butt and stare at it until my neck stiffens. Someone has been here. Close, recent. The cabin is not a secret. It is a point on a map and a memory in somebody's head. I stop using the main trail. I move in loops, approaching the cabin from different angles. I keep my food hidden. I keep my pack ready. I decide on an escape route and clear it of brush, quietly, using my pocket knife and hands. I pick a spot by the river where I can disappear into thick timber if someone pushes me. I also pick a spot where I can see the cabin from cover without being seen easily. A watcher's perch. It makes me feel cold doing it, but feeling cold is better than feeling dead. One afternoon, I return from checking snares I rigged with paracord, and I see the porch board moved. Just slightly, not enough to shout about, enough to notice. I stop behind a tree and stare at the cabin through branches. The shutters are where I left them. The door looks closed. The clearing looks empty. I do not walk in, I wait. Minutes drag. My legs start to ache from holding still. A fly buzzes near my ear and I do not swat it. I keep watching the cabin door. Nothing. I start to think maybe wind shifted the board. Maybe I am seeing patterns that are not real. Then the door opens a crack from the inside. Not swinging wide, just a careful peek. A man's face appears in that crack, older than me by a lot. Sun-worn skin, short hair under a dirty cap, eyes that flick fast across the clearing. He does not step out. He just checks and then pulls back. The door closes softly. That is not a lost hiker. That is someone who knows how to move quietly. I shift behind my tree and grip bear spray. I do not have a gun. I do not have the kind of confidence people get from firepower. I have distance and cover and a cabin that I already used for weeks. I tell myself I can leave. I tell myself I should leave. Then I see something else through the branches. The man limps. Not subtle. Heavy favoring of one leg. He drags his foot slightly when he tries to move inside the doorway. I stay in cover and call out, keeping my voice low. Do not come out. Just talk. My voice sounds steadier than I feel. Who are you? The door opens a little wider. The man keeps one hand on the frame. The other is empty, held where I can see it. Grant Hollis, he says. His voice is rough, not loud. Cabin's in the book. I'm not here to take a nap. The name hits me because I saw it in the logbook. It feels unreal that a name on paper has turned into a person standing in my doorway. I stay behind the tree. You are hurt. He looks down at his leg, then back up. Ankle's done, he says. Trail took it, not infected, not sick, just busted. He pauses, eyes narrowing. You have been here. I smelled fish. Saw your wire. I do not answer that. I keep my distance. If you are not sick, why should I let you stay? He gives a short, humorless nod. You do not have to, he says. But you are in the bob. Winter comes fast. 2 people can cut wood faster than 1. 2 people can watch a clearing better than 1. He shifts his weight, and the limp gets worse. He grips the door frame harder. If you send me away, I am slow. Slow gets you dead out here now. I do the math in my head without calling it math. If I let him in, I risk him turning on me. If I send him away, I risk him dying close enough that it draws infected to the area, or close enough that another person finds him and tracks back to the cabin. If I help him and he survives, he might owe me, or he might decide he owns the place because he knew it first. I step out from behind the tree, but I do not approach. I keep the bear spray visible. Sit on the porch, I tell him. Hands visible, slow. He does it, lowering himself with a tight jaw, careful control, the kind of movement that says pain is real, but he refuses to show it in a way that can be used against him. He sits on the porch step, one leg extended, boots scuffed and dirty. When he lifts his pant cuff, his ankle is swollen enough that the skin looks stretched. I keep my distance and talk while I think. You are a ranger? Used to be, he says. Smokejumper too, seasonal, whatever work was up. I know these trails. He looks at the woods, not at me. I came in when the roads went bad. Figured this cabin would be empty, figured wrong. I am not looking for trouble, I say. I am just trying to stay alive." "So am I," he answers. Then he glances at me. "And you do not have a rifle." I do not like how he says it. Not mocking, not kind, just observation. "Do you?" I ask. He shakes his head once. "Lost mine in a fall. Kept the ammo. That is how dumb this month is." I decide to help him, but I do it on my terms. I bring him inside only after I make him leave his pack on the porch. I keep him in the main room where I can see him. I keep the door bar within reach. I tell him where he will sleep, which is on the floor near the stove, not on the bunk. I tell him I will check his ankle and splint it. But if he tries anything, he will regret it. I do not say how. I let the threat be vague. Vague makes people cautious. He does not argue. He watches me with a flat expression, tracking my movements, evaluating. He is not friendly. He is not cruel. He is practical in a way that makes me uneasy, because practical people do not waste energy on comforting lies. I use the old medical supplies first, and then my own kit. I wrap his ankle with gauze that smells faintly of cardboard. I cut 2 straight sticks and brace them along his boot. I lash them with cloth strips torn from an old shirt I found in the cabin trunk. He stays quiet through all of it, only once making a small sound through his teeth when I tighten the wrap. He does not pull away. He does not flinch dramatically. He just stares at the wall and waits for it to be done. When I finish, I sit back and watch him. "What do you know?" I ask, because there is no point pretending anymore. "About what is happening." He looks at me for a long second. "Cities went loud," he says. "Then quiet. Roads got blocked. Some people got sick and went violent. Some died and got up again." He says it without extra emotion, and that is somehow worse than panic. Noise draws them. Blood draws them. A lot of people got bit thinking it was a normal fight. He shifts slightly on the floor. That is the whole story. We fall into a routine that is not comfortable, but it is workable. I do not trust him. He does not trust me. Trust is not required for survival if rules exist. We create rules without sitting down for a long discussion. It happens in short exchanges and repeated behaviors. He does not touch my pack. I do not touch his ammo. We divide food with simple fairness. We keep voices low. We do not light a fire in the stove unless we can control smoke. We do not go far from the cabin alone unless the other person knows the route and time window. Grant becomes useful immediately, even on one leg. He shows me how to improve my snare placement, so I stop wasting time checking empty loops. He shows me a spot where the river bends shallow and fish get trapped in calmer water. He points out that my wire cans are too obvious, visible from a distance, and he helps me move them lower and tuck them behind brush. He moves around the cabin on his hands and good foot at first. Then on a makeshift crutch he builds from a branch and cloth. He does not complain, he just works. The cabin feels smaller with another person inside. Every sound has a source now. Every movement has meaning. If he stands up in the night to pee outside, I wake. If I shift on the bunk, he opens his eyes. We learn each other's patterns without wanting to. I learn he counts supplies in his head. I learn he tests the door latch twice before sleeping. I learn he hates wasting matches, and he will relight a candle stub instead of using a new one. He learns I check the tree line every time I step out, and I never turn my back on the clearing for long. One morning, while we are both outside splitting rotted wood into usable kindling, he stops and listens. His head turns toward the river. I freeze too. There is a faint sound, irregular, not animal. Footsteps on brush and rock. More than one person. Grant gestures me back toward the cabin with 2 fingers, quick and sharp. I move without argument. We get inside fast, shutters half closed, eyes at the cracks. I grab bear spray and the hatchet I use for kindling. Grant pulls his small knife, but I can see the frustration in his face at having nothing better. 2 figures appear at the edge of the clearing. A man and a woman. Packs on, both holding sticks, not weapons. The man's shirt is torn at the shoulder. The woman's hair is tied back tight, face smeared with dirt. They stop when they see the cabin, and the relief that crosses their faces makes me clench my jaw. Relief makes people do reckless things. The man calls out, "Hello, anybody inside?" His voice is too loud. He is doing it on purpose, trying to sound confident. Grant keeps his voice low, aimed at me. "Do not answer fast," he says. "Let them show their hands. Let them talk." The woman takes a few steps closer, palms out. "We are not sick," she says. "We just need water and maybe a night. We are heading north." Grant leans toward the door, but does not open it. "Water's in the river," he calls back, controlled volume. "Keep your distance." The man looks annoyed. "Come on," he says. "We are not trying to steal anything. We are just tired." He takes another step. I see Grant's posture change. He shifts his weight onto his good leg, making himself taller in the doorway. "Stop," he says, louder now. "You take another step, you do not get help. Back to the tree line." The woman grabs the man's sleeve and pulls him back, hard. "Do not!" She snaps at him, and her voice has the sound of someone who has already seen what happens when men decide pride matters. She looks toward the cabin. "We will fill bottles and go." They do. They keep their distance, moving to the river and filling containers, glancing up at the cabin every few seconds. When they finish, the woman nods once toward the cabin, a quick gesture of respect. Then she pulls the man away, and they vanish into the trees. No fight, no pleading, no drama. The whole exchange takes minutes, and yet my hands stay stiff on the hatchet handle long after they are gone. Grant shuts the door and bars it again. He looks at me. "That will happen again," he says. "More people will come. Cabins on maps, cabins in heads." I swallow and look at the shutters. "So what do we do?" He answers without hesitation. "We get ready for winter," he says, "and we get ready for people." Weeks slide into colder nights. The first real snow dusts the ground and then melts by noon. Then it returns and stays longer. The river edge starts to crust with ice in the mornings. Grant's ankle heals enough that he can walk without the crutch for short stretches, though his limp never fully leaves. I do not ask him about it. Injuries are just facts now. We increase wood stores without making a big visible pile. Grant insists on spreading it out, stacking smaller caches behind trees and under a tarp that we camouflage with branches. He explains it in a few words while we work. Big pile tells a story. It tells someone you plan to stay. I nod and keep stacking. My hands crack from cold. My nails get dirty and stay dirty. I stop caring about how I look. I care about not leaving tracks that lead straight back to the door. I learn to step on rocks when possible. I learn to brush my footprints with a branch if the snow is light enough. It feels paranoid. It also feels smart. We do light the stove sometimes now. The smoke is a risk, but freezing is also a risk. We pick days with wind that will carry smoke low and away. We burn small fires, hot and fast, and we keep a damp cloth ready to smother it if we hear movement. Grant cleans the stovepipe with a wire tool he makes from scrap, and the draw improves. When the stove finally burns clean, the cabin feels less damp, less heavy. We keep conversations short. mostly tied to tasks. Still, small truths leak out. I learned Grant had a house in Kalispell once, sold it years ago after a divorce he does not describe. I learn he has a sister somewhere in Idaho, and he has no idea if she is alive. He learns I was writing a thesis on human behavior during crises, which makes him snort once. "You picked a bad time to study that," he says. "It is not a joke. It is just a fact." I do not tell him about my parents often, not because I do not miss them, but because the missing is useless here. I keep their faces in my head, and I move my hands. That is my way of staying steady. One afternoon, we find evidence that someone has been watching the cabin. Grant spots it first, a scuff mark on a tree trunk at a height that suggests a shoulder brushed it, not an animal. Then we find a small depression in the snow where someone knelt, not close to the cabin, close enough to see the door. Grant crouches and studies it, then looks up at the timberline. "One person," he says. "Maybe two, hard to tell. Not a stumble, this is waiting." I feel my mouth go dry, and I force myself to keep moving. I do not run to the cabin. Running turns you into prey. I walk back steady, head turning in slow arcs, scanning. My fingers grip bear spray inside my pocket, thumb resting on the safety. Inside, we shut shutters and sit in silence, listening. Minutes, then longer. The cabin creaks. The stove ticks as it cools. No footsteps, no voices. Just the knowledge that someone was close enough to breathe the same air. Grant finally breaks the silence. "People do not watch unless they want something," he says. "What do they want?" I ask, keeping my voice low. He looks at the pantry shelves. "Food," he says. Then he looks at the bunk, at the stove, at the roof. Warmth, shelter, a door that shuts. That night, we change how we sleep. Grant takes the floor near the door with the hatchet within reach. I take the bunk, but I keep my boots on and my pack strap over my wrist. We do not discuss it in depth. We just do it. In the early morning, a sound wakes me. Not a loud crash, a soft scrape, something rubbing against wood. Grant is already upright, head tilted, eyes locked on the door. He raises a hand for silence. I hold still, listening. The scrape repeats, then a pause, then a faint tap, the kind that might be a knuckle against the frame. Grant leans close to the door without removing the bar. "Say it," he whispers, barely audible. "Say what you want." A man's voice comes through the wood, controlled and low. "We know you are inside," the voice says. "Open up. We can trade." Grant does not respond immediately. He looks at me, and I see the question in his eyes. Do we engage or do we stay silent and hope he leaves? Silence can provoke. Speech can invite. I step closer, still behind Grant, and speak through the door. "What do you have?" "Ammo," the man answers. "Real ammo. Also salt. And a little medicine." Grant's jaw tightens. Ammo is valuable. Salt is valuable. Medicine is priceless. That is why the offer feels wrong. People do not offer priceless things without expecting a bigger prize. Grant answers, voice steady. Step back from the door, hands visible through the window. Then we talk. There is a pause. Then the man says, "Come on, we are not here to hurt you." Grant's voice hardens. "Step back," he repeats. Footsteps crunch in the snow. I move to the window crack and peer out. A man stands 10 yards from the porch, hands out. He is tall, wearing a dark coat, face partly hidden by a scarf. Behind him, another figure lingers near a tree. That second person stays half concealed, not stepping fully into view. That is a decision. Grant sees it too from his angle. He calls out through the door. "Second person steps out," he says. "Now." The tall man laughs once, short and flat. "You are picky," he says. Grant does not laugh back. "Do it or leave," he says. The second figure stays hidden. The tall man's hands lower slightly, and I feel the shift in the air, that invisible moment when a conversation stops being a conversation. Grant's voice drops into something colder. "We are done," he says. "Walk away." The tall man takes one slow step forward instead. "Open the door," he says. "You have something we want." Grant does not argue. He moves fast, yanking a small pouch off a peg by the stove and tossing it toward me. "Back window," he murmurs. "Now." My body reacts before my brain fully catches up. I grab the pouch, sling my pack, and move to the rear window that sticks. Grant already loosened it days ago, and it slides up with a muted scrape. Cold air hits my face. I swing one leg out, then the other, landing in snow that comes up to my ankles. I move immediately into the trees, keeping low, not running upright. From behind, I hear the porch boards creak, then a thud against the door, then another. The door holds, but I can hear the wood strain. I keep moving along the escape route we cleared, weaving between trunks, using shadows. I do not look back until I reach the watcher's perch. From there, I can see the cabin through branches. The tall man is on the porch, shoulder slamming into the door. The hidden figure has moved now, stepping out with something long in his hands. A crowbar or a rifle, hard to tell. Grant is not visible, the shutters are closed. The cabin looks sealed, quiet, stubborn. Then the door opens. Not wide, just enough for Grant to shove it outward hard. The tall man stumbles back off the porch step, surprised. Grant does not chase. He throws something instead, a small object that arcs and lands in the snow near the porch. A glass jar. It breaks. Powder puffs into the air. Pepper. Grant's bare deterrent trick, improvised, brutal on eyes and lungs. The tall man recoils, hands flying to his face. The second figure flinches too, stepping back. Grant slams the door, bars it again. I stay at the perch, gripping bear spray so hard my fingers ache. I do not move, because movement draws eyes. The two men stagger back, coughing, wiping their faces. They retreat into the trees, not running, but moving fast enough to show the deal is over. I wait longer than feels sane before returning. When I finally slip back to the cabin's rear window, Grant is inside, braced by the door, sweat shining on his forehead. He keeps the bar in place even after he sees my face. "You okay?" he asks. I nod. My voice takes a second to work. "You threw pepper?" Grant gives a short nod. "Old ranger habit," he says. "Cabins get bears, sometimes people." I close the window and latch it. Hands clumsy. My mind keeps replaying the tall man's calm voice and the second figure staying hidden. That second person was the real threat. The tall man was bait. Grant looks at the shutters. "They will come back," he says, "or others will." I sit hard on the bunk and force myself to think forward. "Then we stop being a soft target," I say. The next days are constant work. We reinforce the door frame with more metal bracing. We reposition our noise lines farther out to give us more warning time. We pick fallback positions in the woods, and we rehearse them once, moving through routes quietly, testing sight lines. It feels unreal, practicing escape from a cabin that already felt like my only stable point. Still, denial is expensive. Preparation is cheaper. We also change our smoke discipline. We only burn at night when wind is steady, and we keep the fire small. We cook food outside less and shift to cold meals when possible. It is miserable. It is safe. Safe wins. A week later, we find tracks again. Multiple sets, not the same pair from before. These are lighter steps, maybe a woman, maybe a smaller man. There are also marks that suggest someone dragged something heavy, a sled maybe, or a body. The thought sits in my mind and I keep working anyway, because there is no benefit to staring at tracks until dread eats me. The infected return in small ways too. One morning, I spot one across the river, standing still near the waterline, head angled in an unnatural way, clothing stiff with old dirt. It does not move until a gust of wind rattles branches, and then it steps forward, slow, toward the sound. Sound pulls it more than sight. Grant notices it too. "Keep quiet," he mutters, and we both back away from the window. We wait until it drifts downstream and disappears. That becomes part of life. The infected wander through the drainage, pulled by random noises, then lost again. The wilderness does not concentrate them the way streets do, but it does not erase them. We learn to treat them the way you treat a wildfire far off. Always possible, always moving, never fully gone. As winter deepens, the cabin turns into a pressure cooker of small conflicts. Not shouting matches, not drama. The quieter kind that happens when two people need different things. Grant wants strict rules, strict rationing, strict control. I want some flexibility, some room to breathe, because control can turn into obsession. One night, he counts food again and says, "We cut portions." I look at the shelf. "We already cut portions." He shakes his head. "We cut again." I hold his stare. If you cut too far, you get weak. Weak means mistakes. Grant's face stays flat. Mistakes also happen when you get comfortable. I do not argue longer. I just take my portion and eat slowly, making my jaw work, not letting him see any emotional reaction he can use. That is what trust contests look like. Not yelling, not threats, just two people refusing to give ground. Then, in midwinter, we get hit by the worst kind of problem. Another human group that does not announce itself. It begins with our far noise line going off, tin cans rattling faint in the distance. Grant and I snap awake at the same time. We do not speak. We move into positions, him by the door, me by the rear window, both watching, waiting. We hear soft voices outside, muffled by snow and trees, not loud enough to understand. Then a new sound, the crunch of many feet. More than two, more than three, a group. Grant leans close to my ear and whispers, "Do not open, not yet." I nod once. My fingers settle on bear spray and the hatchet. The cabin feels too thin. The walls feel like paper. A knock comes, careful this time. Then a woman's voice, low and controlled. "Cabin," she says, "we are not here to fight. We need to talk." Grant calls back, "Step into the clearing. One person, hands empty." There is a pause, then footsteps. I peer through the shutter crack. A woman steps out, maybe in her 30s, wearing a thick coat and a beanie, hands raised. Behind her, shapes remain in the trees. At least 4 more, maybe 6. Hard to count. The woman stops in the open. "We have a sick kid," she says. "Not infected. Fever. We need shelter for one night." Grant's jaw tightens. He whispers to me without looking away from the crack. "Sick kid gets you to open doors." I whisper back, "Or it is true." He gives me a sharp glance. "True still kills you." I hate how right he might be. I also hate the version of myself that closes a door on a sick kid without verifying anything. This is where the world breaks people, not just with monsters, with choices that stain you. I speak through the door, choosing each word carefully. If you have a kid, bring the kid into the clearing alone with you. Nobody else moves. Keep distance." The woman hesitates, then nods. She steps back toward the trees and says something low. A moment later, she returns carrying a small bundle. A child, maybe 6 or 7, wrapped tight in blankets. The child's head lolls slightly. The woman's arms shake from strain and cold. She stops again 10 yards out. "We are not armed," she says. "We are just cold." Grant mutters, "People always say that." I stare at the child's face through the crack. Skin flushed, lips dry, eyes closed. The child does not look dead. The child looks sick in a normal, human way. That makes my throat tighten and I force my hands to stay steady. Grant whispers, "If you open, we lose the cabin." I whisper back, "If we do nothing, we become something else." We compromise in the only way that keeps both truths intact. Grant opens the door just enough to slide out a bottle of water and 2 packets of soup, plus the last fever reducer tablets from the old box. He does it fast, with his body between the opening and the woman, then bars the door again. He calls out, "You take that and you go. No shelter, no entry. This is what we offer." The woman stares at the food and medicine in the snow, then looks up at the cabin. Her face changes, and I can see anger trying to rise. Then she looks down at the child in her arms, and the anger collapses into resignation. She steps forward just enough to grab the items, then backs away, clutching them. "Thank you," she says, but her tone is tight. Then she turns and disappears into the trees. The other figures follow. No attack, no shouting, just withdrawal. Grant keeps his hand on the door bar for a long time after the clearing empties. "That was the best outcome," he says quietly. I do not answer him right away, because my mouth wants to say something that would start a fight. Instead, I sit down, back against the wall, and stare at the logbook on the table. The cabin is still ours. The kid is still out there. Both facts live in me at the same time, and neither feels good. The days after that are tense in a new way. We both know word travels, even in wilderness. People share map points. People share cabin locations. People share rumors about who lives where and what supplies exist. If that group survives, they may come back with more force. If that group dies, someone else may track their trail and end up here anyway. So we do more. We dig a shallow cache in frozen soil near a landmark rock and hide half our remaining food there, sealed in a metal pot wrapped in plastic. We stash extra clothing and matches in a separate cache. We plan for losing the cabin. Planning for loss makes the cabin feel less solid, but it also makes me less afraid of the door breaking. Grant teaches me a simple signal system using 3 stones on a stump. If the stones are arranged one way, it means he is near. Another way means leave. Another way means danger. We do not talk about it much. We just set it and memorize it. I start writing more in the logbook. Not poetry, not dramatic confessions, just facts and warnings. Human presence increasing. Infected seen downriver. Supplies low. Cabin occupied by 2. Do not approach without calling out from distance. I write it for whoever might find it after we are gone. But I also write it because it keeps my mind clear. By late winter, something shifts between me and Grant. Not warmth, not friendship. Something more practical. Reliance. The kind that forms when people survive the same threats repeatedly without betraying each other. He stops watching my hands every time I reach for food. I stop keeping my pack strap looped around my wrist at night. We still sleep light. We still keep the door barred. But the cabin feels less like a hostage situation and more like a partnership that neither of us would admit out loud. One day, we find the woman's group trail again, this time moving away, not toward. Tracks headed north, smaller prints among them. The child is still with them, at least in the way the footprints suggest. I stare at those tracks longer than I should. Then I force myself to turn away and go split wood. Survival does not pause for relief. Spring does not arrive in a clean moment. It drips in. Snow melts in patches. The river swells. Mud returns. The cabin roof leak gets worse. And Grant and I climb up with scrap tar paper and nails scavenged from an old crate. We hammer quietly, pausing whenever a bird calls too sharply or the wind shifts. Up on the roof, I can see farther than I usually allow myself to see. Endless timber, ridges, a pale sky. No smoke columns, no helicopters, no distant highway glitter. Just wilderness. I realize, standing there with a hammer in my hand, that the world I left is not waiting for me. There is no normal to return to. There is only movement forward, day by day, task by task. Grant hands me a nail without looking directly at me. "You did good," he says, simple, and then he goes back to work. That is the closest thing to praise he has offered. It lands heavier than any comforting speech.